Empire Tales. Ivan the Terrible, the first Tsar of Russia. Imagine a land of endless, frozen horizons and dark, ancient forests, where the biting winter wind is the only thing that dares to speak for months at a time. In the 16th century, Russia was not the massive world power we know today. It was a chaotic, fractured collection of principalities, surrounded by enemies on every side and ruled by a boy who grew up in the suffocating shadows of fear. This boy would eventually become a man whose name would be whispered in terror across the centuries. He was Ivan IV, the first man to crown himself Tsar of all the Russias. But history has given him a far more haunting title, Ivan the Terrible. Ivan's story begins with a childhood that would shatter even the strongest spirit. He was born in the year 1530, a child of prophecy and high expectations. However, his world collapsed before he could even understand it. When he was only 3 years old, his father died, and at the tender age of 8, his mother was suspected of being poisoned by rival noble factions. Ivan was left entirely alone in a den of vipers. The boyars, the powerful Russian aristocrats, began a brutal tug-of-war for control of the throne. To them, young Ivan was not a prince, but a nuisance or a puppet. They treated the young prince with cold neglect and shocking cruelty. There are records of Ivan and his brother being left hungry and dressed in rags, while the boyars feasted in his palace and stole the royal treasures. Ivan was forced to watch as the men who were supposed to be his protectors murdered his friends and advisors in the very corridors of the palace. During these formative years, the darkness began to take root. Ivan would reportedly spend his days throwing small animals from the high palace towers to watch them fall, a disturbing glimpse into the lack of empathy and the deep-seated rage that would define his reign. He learned a hard, bitter lesson early in life. In Russia, you either hold the whip or you feel its sting. There was no middle ground, and in Ivan's mind, there was no room for mercy. At the age of 16, Ivan made a move that stunned the nobility. He didn't just ask for the crown. He demanded a coronation that was unlike any before it. He claimed the title of Tsar, a word derived from the Roman Caesar, signifying that he was not just a king, but an absolute, godlike authority on earth. Surprisingly, his early reign was a golden age for the Russian people. He updated the legal code, created Russia's first standing army, and established the Zemsky Sabor, an early form of parliament. He was a brilliant strategist, personally leading his troops to conquer the powerful khanates of Kazan and Astrakhan, which finally broke the Mongol yoke that had held Russia for centuries. To celebrate these massive victories, he ordered the construction of St. Basil's Cathedral in Moscow. Legend has it that the building was so magnificent that Ivan had the architects blinded afterward, so they could never duplicate its beauty for anyone else. Even in his time of glory, the cruelty was never far below the surface. The true turning point, the moment the light was swallowed by the void, came in the year 1560. His beloved wife, Anastasia Romanovna, the only person who could calm his volatile temper and remind him of his humanity, died suddenly. Ivan was convinced beyond any doubt that she had been poisoned by the boyars, just like his mother. Grief-stricken and fueled by a lifetime of paranoia, Ivan's mind finally broke. He abruptly abandoned Moscow, taking the royal treasury and threatening to abdicate. The people, fearing a civil war, begged him to return. He agreed, but on one terrifying condition. He demanded absolute, unchecked power to punish anyone he deemed a traitor. To enforce this new, dark order, Ivan created the Oprichnina, history's first organized secret police force. These 6,000 men dressed entirely in black, rode black horses, and carried the severed heads of dogs and brooms on their saddles, to bark at enemies and sweep away traitors. A reign of terror like no other gripped the nation. Ivan suspected everyone, from his closest generals to the lowliest monks. The executions were not just murders, They were public spectacles of horror. He wiped out entire noble families, seizing their lands and wealth. In the year 1570, his paranoia reached a peak when he accused the entire city of Novgorod of plotting with his enemies. He led his personal guard to the city and oversaw a systematic massacre that lasted for 5 weeks. Thousands of men, women, and children were drowned in the freezing river or burned alive. The river Fokhov was said to be so clogged with corpses that it ceased to flow. As Ivan grew older, the madness seeped into his own bloodline, leading to the ultimate tragedy. In the year 1581, Ivan entered the chambers of his pregnant daughter-in-law and, disapproving of her clothing, began to assault her. When his eldest son and heir, Ivan Ivanovich, rushed in to defend her, the Tsar turned his iron-tipped staff on his own son. In a fit of uncontrollable rage, he struck the prince a fatal blow to the head. The silence that followed was the loudest moment in Russian history. A famous painting by Ilya Repin captures this horrific scene. The Tsar cradling his dying son, his eyes wide with a sudden, devastating realization of what he had done. With one stroke of anger, he had murdered the only person he truly loved and effectively ended the future of his own dynasty. Ivan lived for 3 more years, a broken, haunted shell of a man. He died in the year 1584, reportedly collapsing during a game of chess. He left behind a Russia that was massive in territory but shattered in spirit, exhausted by decades of war, heavy taxes, and internal slaughter. His death plunged the country into the time of troubles, a period of famine, civil war, and foreign invasion that nearly erased Russia from the map. Ivan the Terrible was a man of 2 faces, the brilliant architect of a unified Russian empire and the psychotic tyrant who drenched its foundations in the blood of his own people. He was a man who sought absolute control over a nation, but could never achieve control over the demons screaming inside his own mind. His legacy remains a chilling, permanent reminder of what happens when absolute power is placed in the hands of absolute paranoia. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. If you enjoyed this cinematic exploration of the first Tsar, do not forget to like, subscribe, and join Empire Tales for more legendary stories. The past is never truly dead. It is just waiting to be told.